Spring.
Hi, welcome to the Spiritual Alchemy Energy Transfigurations podcast. Tonight we have Probst, author of 9 Days to Atlanta. I feel like Spirit led me to have you on my show because I kept seeing your advertisements wherever I went, social media, Amazon. I'm like, okay. I just started this podcast. I need guests. I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask this guy if he wants to come on. So,
Well, thank you.
Enjoyed the book. And I find it very inspirational as an author, writer myself, and having gone through the process. There's no chapters. There's no table of contents. It's like, okay, that's a rebel approach. I mean, really, is it necessary to tell a story? No, it's not. So I'm like, I really like this guy. I like it. It's a rebel way to write a book. So I'm kind of interested in, like, how'd you go about editing and choosing how you publish this book?
Well, before I get into that, let me just comment on what you just said about, no index and no chapters. At first, I was going to make each day a separate chapter, and then I thought it just didn't seem right, So I just rolled it into the next page, and actually, one of the first peoples that read my book. Of course, they were a friend of mine. I gave him a copy courtesy. What's your opinion? Mm-hmm. And he said, "Oh, I love the idea of not having chapters." He said they just ran together, and it kind of flowed with the how do you say it? With the misery, It just stopped. It just kept going and going, and I thought, well, I didn't plan it that way, but hey, that's cool. But as far as publishing is concerned, of course, I never dreamed in my entire life I'd ever write a book. It's something, I don't know if you want to hear the whole story, but once I decided that I would, I did like anybody. I got on the internet and said, well, how do you get a book published? And people say, well, you send a transcript into these publishers, blah, 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 and they'll let you know if it's interesting. But then I read further that, unless you're already a pretty well-known writer, it's just going to go in the trash can. So then I started looking at, self-publishing, and I went to a lot of websites where they advertised that. And of course, when you're paying for it out of your own pocket, you go, how much do I want to spend?
Right.
So I looked at some that, they had different packages. Mm-hmm. The more expensive they were, the more stuff you got. And so I picked one that was kind of, I would say middle of the road, more towards the bottom, because I thought, well, I decided to do it just for fun, if anything. If nobody bought it, I'd give it to all my friends and family and so forth. And so I picked a publishing company, and if I actually have some other projects in the works right now. Mm-hmm. Whether I ever publish them, I'm not sure. But if I do, I will take a different route altogether. I'll probably get someone. The publishing company that did mine, I think they did a good job on the artwork for the cover and so forth. I had several ideas, and what they came up with I liked right away, so that was worth it. But I found that I can get that done for, well, about $350. So I would probably get someone to do that for me. And then I had numerous friends. One friend of mine. I don't know if I should mention their names or not, but she is a president of a writing club and taught English in a college level and actually wrote speeches for a governor of one of the states. She read it and proofed it for me. And so when I got the publishing company's proof back, I found that probably 98% of it was just punctuation and some grammar stuff. And I 98% of it, what they had, I ignored. I said, well, I'm writing this book and it's going to be my way or the highway. And so
I love it.
I'm paying for it. You know, they're not.
I know.
So,
and then you've got to do all the marketing. I mean, that's like, 10%.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, this outfit, they say, oh, we're going to send out news releases and we're going to do this and do that. And they did, but I can't remember the number. We're going to send it out to 1,000 different places for news releases and so forth. And I could only find about 6 of them. And so, you wonder, well, did I just throw my money away or what? And so I was very disappointed in that. In fact, the news release that they sent me, a draft of it for me to approve. Mm-hmm. And I look, I'm no, if you read the back of my book, when I was a kid, I had a reading problem. And I never dreamed I'd ever write anything like this. And so I'm having an old moment here. I just forgot where I was headed with this little story. But the press release was just terrible. A third grader could have read it. So I had this woman friend of mine. She helped me with it, and she did a real good job of it, I thought. So I would go a different route. I actually found a website. This guy explained how he did just exactly what I did. He went to a self-publishing company where you pay him to do the artwork, proof it, print it, do some sort of sales and so forth. And of course, his thing was, gosh, he didn't sell anything because the price of the book was so expensive. And he has since then published 5 or 6 other books, and he does it himself. And he sells them on Amazon and so forth for anywhere from 40 to 50% of the price at the publishing company, because they got to get their cut also.
Right.
And I think the price, honestly, on my book, I mean, I shouldn't say it, but I don't have any control of it right now, is a bit high. I mean, it's, if it was 400 pages or something, I may think differently, but it's not. It's depending on how fast you read, an hour and a half read if you just sit down and read it. It's a very simple, easy book. It shouldn't cost that much. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Let me just comment. I love the size of your book because it fit like in anything. It was really easy. I love reading a book, not digital, but anyways. We forgot to mention what your book's about. Your book's about
coronavirus. No, I'm kidding. No, it's about a trip I made when I was 17, Houston, Texas to Atlanta, Georgia on a bicycle.
Yeah.
And it was, like I say in the book, it was something I came up with way back when I was in 7th grade. I used to be embarrassed to say these things, but I'm an old man now, and I don't really care. I outgrew my juvenile attitude about things. When I was a kid, I was a very poor reader, and if you were ever a poor reader in school, you'll never catch up. It's a struggle to the day you get out of school. And I'm convinced that they let me get out of school because I showed up for 12 years straight with only missing one day. They just got tired of seeing me. And so, um, so anyway, I thought I was, there's a possibility I was going to fail seventh grade, and I told my parents about it. My dad was not too happy, and
You're going to run away.
yeah, he was going to tear me up, you know. And I decided I had a good, my best friend who lived behind me, or had moved to, his dad was an oil executive with Arco Oil. They're long gone now. They moved to Atlanta. His company moved them to Atlanta. And he had written me and told me that, boy, it was out in the country and they had hills and streams and all that. And of course, you know, when you're in seventh grade, you still have quite an imagination. I thought, well, I'll just run away. I'll just go live in the woods. Well, that never happened, but 4 years later, you know, for years I thought, I wonder if I could have actually done that. And I wanted to go see my friend in Atlanta. And I had been planning to do it via motorcycle or motor scooter until I realized I didn't have the money. So I thought, well, you know, I think I'm gonna try it on a bicycle. And if you read my book, I don't know how many times I've said it, but I bet I could make more money if I got a $10 every time I called myself a dummy than I have on selling the book. I'm telling you, I called myself a dummy for 9 days straight. You dummy, you dummy. What are you thinking?
And then you got there and you're like, oh, thank God, I'm done.
Right? You know, it's kind of, yeah, it's interesting because I remember when I finally got there, I pulled up my friend's driveway, or in Atlanta, they have, in Texas where I live, at least in Houston, people have garages. You don't see carports. In Atlanta, and even up in northern parts of Texas, people actually have carports that are part of the house. And I pulled in their carport and I just kind of stood there and I went, wow, I'm here. You know, all of a sudden it's over. And and now at my age, I'm starting to realize that that's what life is.
Right.
You know, the way it was then when I was in the Army. You know, it seems like it's never going to end. And then one day, all of a sudden, it's like it's over. And that's the way that trip was. It was kind of an interesting. You don't realize it till it's done. You go, wow, I made it. I actually did it. But it taught me a valuable lesson that if you stick with something, you can finish most anything.
Well, you know, what I really picked up, because I really relate to this myself, is I'm going to show my big brothers and the naysayers, I'm going to do this. And, you know, it's a real like coming of age, like you're invincible. You're still, you're young and stupid. You're invincible. And anything's possible, you know. And then in the adventure of it, you're realizing that there's more out there than what I grew up knowing, you know. This is a real touchy, sensitive subject that I that you had made a post on. So, the use of the NWord was used in a context that really described the time in which you lived in.
Exactly.
But to take that a little further, I took a trip to Texas a few years back. Went to go get a childhood friend of mine from Texas. And, you know, she lived in California, you know, all her life. And she's like, Julie, it's different here. It's different.
It is.
It's like you're going to have culture shock coming here. It's like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And you're going to hear that word. Yeah. You're going to hear it. You know, she's like, oh, my God, I can't, you know, it's just like completely different than California and growing up in California. Well, I'm personally writing I'm working on a book that there's so many times I've wanted to give up.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And your trip, there's many times you just wanted to stop, turn around and go back home, but you were like a few hundred miles into it. You're like, I'm dummy.
Well, it's interesting because most of the time I got that mindset. It would be later in the evening and I'd go, okay, in the morning, I'm going to catch a truck and head back or whatever. But after a good night's sleep, you wake up and you kind of look around and you go, oh, it's funny because first couple of days you go, okay, I got to go back and face my parents. They wouldn't have a problem, but I shouldn't say this, but my smart ass brothers,
right.
Younger brothers, I'd have to put up with them. Then when after you get halfway, then you go, wait a minute, I'm halfway. What am I going to tell people? I got halfway and then I gave up. So it's interesting dynamics that make you keep moving forward. It's a little bit of you don't want to be embarrassed and you don't want to give up and then at the same time there was so many things that people that I met, everybody would go, oh, your parents let you do this. I go, yeah, my parents were very open, that kind of stuff. And they were just amazed that my parents had let me do something like that. But really, I never had anybody really made me worry for my safety. Everybody was overly friendly and nice. And
that's helpful.
And maybe that's something we've lost now. I don't know. And if it is, that's sad.
It is.
But you're talking about culture. If you first go to California and you're from Texas, it's the reverse. It's a different culture. You go, oh my gosh. So yeah, but let me ask you, it wasn't as bad as they led you to believe, was it?
Oh no.
Maybe I should have question.
Let me tell you, and I got a Whataburger too, and that was not hyped up. I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna let her hype this up.
Well, it's funny because my parents are from Indiana, and they moved down here after they got married, and all my brothers and I were born in Texas, and of course, when we were kids, we'd go to a Civil War movie and we'd be back here, get them Yankees. And my dad would turn and say, boys, if you didn't know this, y'all lost that war. We go, oh, Dad, you're just a Yankee. He goes, I lived here longer than you. But he was interesting because he always talked about these White Castle hamburgers. Oh, you boys, you don't know what hamburgers, White Castle hamburgers. Well, finally, we went as a family up to Indianapolis, and he took some White Castle hamburger place. Here, do they have White Castles in California?
I think there haven't been.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm sure they're still there and they're still real popular.
Oh yeah.
We went, oh my gosh, these aren't hamburgers, and my dad just got mad at us about it. They are hamburgers. But he told us when he first came to the South, he'd never had a hamburger with lettuce and tomatoes on it.
Oh wow.
Back in those days, I guess up north, nowadays we eat everything everywhere, but there was a time when the country was whole, you spoke differently, you ate differently in different parts of the country. And yeah.
Absolutely.
But back to what you're talking about when I use the N-word, I really wanted to use that just to kind of explain. We were going through a lot of turmoil as we are right now, racially, and
right.
I just lost you.
Well,
okay.
Going on.
I got you. But anyway, it was just all through the book, I talked about current events, the Vietnam War, the racial differences we were having, and just general condition and situation of the country as I remember. I mean, even when I was making that trip, it was it's just all my life I've been interested in current events and history and stuff. So everywhere I went, I related to historical things that had happened or were happening there. So I decided to add that in my book because it's actually what I remember.
Right. And to put you in an environment, to explain what environment you were living in and the culture you were living in at the time, the times.
Well, in the time, we had Reverend Jackson, who's, having peaceful protests and so forth. But at the same time, we also had things like the Watts riots and so forth in California. And there were other places where same things that were happening then that are happening today. People were burning cities down, not cities, but neighborhoods and so forth. And like I say in the book, in one particular place, I helped an old woman, black woman, with her groceries. And, I took them out to the car, and when I came back in to get what I had left on the countertop, the people there were giving me some, they weren't so friendly. And so I went outside and I sat on a picnic table to eat my favorite Hostess cupcakes and a Coke, breakfast of champions. And the newspaper there, and it was talking about some race riots and all that. And I remember just thinking that although the NWord was used by a lot of people in the South, some people may argue with me on this, but I would say that probably in my family and can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My family and the people I was with, the N-word was used more as a description. It wasn't. You didn't say it to black people. It was not. It was just, if you were born in the South, it's just kind of an inherited word passed down for generations. Now it's taboo and nobody says it at all. Well, I say it all. There are still people that are on both sides of the issue that are very hard.
My friend 3 years ago, she's like, they use that here. So just that's
did you Fort Worth,
Dallas area.
Yeah.
So
well, anyways, but yeah, it was in those days. If you were black, you really got a crappy deal.
Right.
There was no signs. There's nobody that actually said go sit at the back of the bus. It was just kind of an they did. And if you went to a restaurant, there'd be signs that say "Backs to the rear door." They had water fountains everywhere. One say white, one would say colored. Like I say in the book, if I was black, I'd be mad as hell.
Right. Absolutely.
So, but anyway, like I said in the book, if you're from the South and you come from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, if you say that you never used the N-word, I'll say that you just lied. Because it was just part of the culture at that time.
Yeah, and my grandparents, they used it.
Yes.
So, and there was a lot of, racism in the family that I picked up on, but not necessarily taking on that mentality. So,
well, people use that word casually without thinking that it offended other people. Now, some people, there's some people that use it to offend people, but I'd say on the most part they did not. And now, even here in the South, it's pretty taboo to use.
Right.
So you don't.
Rightly so. But let's get to your adventure. And so, do you want to share any part of the book with the audience?
Well, I'll tell you what. You asked me when you first, we started talking about this, if I might want to read any. I'm a terrible reader in public. I've taught college level classes. I can get up. I'm not afraid to talk to anybody or any size crowd. But I get really, when I start reading myself, I'm a slow reader and I try to read faster and I end up screwing it up. So I can talk about it, but I really prefer not to read, if you understand that.
I get it. I mean, do you want to share a section of the book that is dear to you?
There's lots of parts of it that I think, I found, kind of entertaining and fun. And one of my favorite ones was, it was like it was my 8th day. The trip was almost over and I'm traveling through Alabama, or riding through Alabama, and coming down this hill, and there's this, I say, well, I'm going to pull over and get, next little store I go to, I'm going to pull over and get me something to drink and snack. I'm coasting down this hill, and there's this little, gas station / store, country store. As I pull in, there's these 4 old guys. 2 of them are playing checkers, and the other 2 are just standing, or actually they were all sitting and they were watching. They're all in their 70s and 80s, and they're just laughing and having a grand time. And I pull and get off my bike, and I walk right past them and go in the store to get something. But when I come out, their table's empty, and they're all standing around my bicycle. I walk up, and they're going, "Well, son, this is a really fancy bicycle you have here." And of course, I had bought this 5-speed bicycle, which I cussed the whole trip because 2 gears were too high and 2 gears were too low, and the one that I used was like a regular bicycle. So I thought, why waste my money on that? And I told them such. They were going, "Well, it's a fancy bicycle." Well, the oldest one of the group said, "Hey, I've ridden bicycles all my life." He says, "Would you let me ride your bicycle?" And I'm kind of thinking, oh my gosh, this guy's ancient. He's the oldest looking one of the bunch.
He's going to croak.
Yeah. And all his buddies are laughing and going, "Oh, you're going to break your neck." And he goes, "No, I've ridden bicycles all my life." So, I said, "Well, okay." I said, "But look, on this bike, the brakes are hand brakes. Remember when you got a brake." So he said, "Well, I'm just going to ride around the station." I said, "Okay." So he climbs on and he heads right up the, when I say hill, it was a hill, but it was a real gradual slope. But, if you're riding up it, it's, at his age, it's not so gradual. And he got, I don't know, 50 meters or 50 yards away. And you could see he started wobbling, and he's trying to turn the bike around because he's getting tired. And he starts just coasting back towards us. And he's just smiling like all get out. And then all of a sudden, he starts trying to brake, and he's pedaling backwards like the bicycles he grew up with. And we're all going, "Use your handbrakes, use your handbrakes." And he just keeps pedaling backwards, and he just comes right in and crashes that bicycle right into a gas pump. He goes flying, everything on my bicycle flies out of these bags I had, and I'm going, oh my gosh. Golly. I mean, it just, and these old guys have been picking on, they just been dead quiet. We ran over and we helped him up, and he brushed himself off, and he was kind of chuckling to himself, like, wow. And so as soon as everybody, and he was rubbing his knee, but he said, "I'm okay, I'm okay." And as soon as his 3 friends realized he was okay, they went to work on him,
Right.
You idiot, In fact, one of them, when he took off, he said, "I've known this guy all my life, and he's always trying to break his neck," And so they were giving him a hard time, and then they started asking me, where I'd come from and where I was headed and all that good stuff. So anyway, everything turned out good, but it was Well, for a moment there was kind of terrifying, but it ended up all well and good. So
Right. He didn't. He wasn't seriously hurt. that, that
no,
that
well,
was that was cute. I enjoyed that part. But
uh,
you also spent a night in jail,
oh yeah, I did.
and you got interviewed for a newspaper article.
What was really interesting about that was later in the day, the same day the old guy crashed my bicycle. Um, I was riding my bicycle along. I was probably 20 miles away from there or so, and this car comes whizzing past me and just pulls up. You know, these are just two lane asphalt roads or tar and gravel roads. In the South, all the little roads were tar and gravel in those days. And he just got past me, just slid over onto the shoulder, dirt and dust flying. And I'm going, holy cow, what's this guy doing? And he jumps out of his car and he runs. He says, "Are you the boy riding your bicycle to Atlanta, Georgia from Houston?" I said, and right away I thought, how in the heck does this guy? And I realized these old guys had called. And so he says, "Would you? I'm a newspaper reporter from the town up here, and would you mind letting me interview?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "Well, just come on back." And I said, "Well, you're not going to do it here at the side of the road?" He goes, "No, we'll go back to my office." So I said, "Well, how far is that?" And it's like 10 miles. I said, "I'm not going backwards." He said, "Well, we'll load your bike up. When I'm finished, we'll bring your bike back." Okay, I'll do that. So we ride into his office and we go in. And, well, he's asked me the story about my trip and all this. And then when I'm about finished, he goes, "Hey, how old are you?" And I said, I'm 18 or 17, going to turn 18. He goes, "Well, you're going to have to register for the draft." Well, Vietnam War was going full blown. And I said, "That's okay." And he goes, "What do you mean it's okay?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to join the Army as soon as I get out of high school anyway." He goes, "Boy, I got no business in Vietnam." And he and I got this argument about Vietnam. And I knew I could get his goat just by, I told him, well, heck, if it wasn't for the French helping us, we'd be speaking the King's English. And he got so mad, he just got up and he just pointed at the door. He was all red faced. He says, "Interview's over." And of course, I skipped out. I think it was funny. When I got outside, I went, "Wait a minute. Now I got to ride my bicycle 10 more miles that I was trying to avoid." So I guess he got the best of me at the end. So then I ride to Roanoke, Alabama. That's where I was headed. And and because of all my delays, I was planning on camping out everywhere. But I ended up not getting as far as I thought I would. And I'm in this town and I pull in, I get this hamburger, and there's a guy in a car. He says, "Hey, you got his family? Hey, it looks like you're a serious rider on that bicycle." And I said, "Well, I don't know about how serious, but I'm riding it." He says, "Where?" So I told him I came from Houston. I'm going to Atlanta. And I said, "Hey, is there any parks around here I could camp at?" He goes, "Oh, not around here." He said, "There's no city parks." He said, "Well, we have a city park, but I wouldn't want to camp there." And I said, "Well, it's like 30 minutes before dark." So he told me where to go. So I drove down. Sure enough, it was just a one city block without a tree, just grass, nothing, not a picnic table, not a basketball net, nothing, just grass. And it was surrounded by houses that were kind of old and had probably nothing wrong with them, but it was kind of eerie looking place. And I was looking at that, and it's like what I call 5 minutes before dark. It's right there. And oh my gosh, there's not even a rest. There's nothing here. And this police car pulls up. "You the boy from Texas?" And I thought, oh my gosh, Alabama, those, everybody tells everybody everything. So I told him, and he said, "Well, hey," I said, "is anything wrong with me staying?" He said, "No, we wouldn't want to stay here, but if you want, you come over to the jail. We'll give you a cell." And I said, "Well, it'll be unlocked. You can come and go if you want." But so they said, "Okay, if you change your mind, they gave me directions." They left in about 5 minutes of standing there looking at that vacant lot. I said, I think I'll go to the jail. So I pedaled over there and went inside, and they were just coming in the door. I did, and they took me in. They gave me a cell, and door was unlocked. And they said, oh, and the place was empty. There was nobody in there. And they said, okay, you can stay here. So you know, and we'll feed you jailhouse breakfast in the morning. I said, okay. So I tried to go to sleep, and about that, I don't know, 30 minutes, an hour later, the lights come on. Well, they had the lights on all the time. I heard the doors jangling. Here comes this police officer, and he's got this gentleman with him, and he introduced me. He's a reporter for the newspaper there. Would I be interested in giving an interview? I said, well, okay. So this is middle of the night. So I tell him the whole story and hanging. And then I told him about the guy that threw me out of his office. He just chuckled. He goes, you know, those guys just aren't very good reporters over there, are they? I found out later they were owned by the same newspaper, but
oh yeah.
Yeah, but anyway. Yeah, he interviewed me in the middle of the night, and I made the front page of the paper. I think the paper was a weekly paper. I don't think it came out every day. In fact, the picture on the cover of my book is a picture of me in front of that jail cell. He took it.
Is that right?
If you look, if you look, you see the bars of the door behind me. He had me roll my bike out and take a picture.
So the map that you have, like inside the book, is that the same map that you used to
No, I used a regular. Back in those days, everybody had maps. You didn't have GPS and
right.
Google Maps and
right.
that kind of stuff. And my dad was a big. My parents were hardworking folks, and my mom made all of our clothes. We weren't poor, but my parents made. My mom made all of our clothes, and we never went out to dinner hardly. We ate at home. And when my dad got his 2 weeks vacation every year, he loaded everybody up in the car, and we went somewhere. We traveled all, and I loved that. I thought that was really cool. He would tell us, well, traveling's like it's good as education you get in school. And I just thought, well, why don't we just travel all year long, Dad? The heck with school. Well, it doesn't work that way, son. So, but he belonged to join AAA, and he could actually tell them where he wanted. They'd send maps with routes
right
on it. So we always had lots of maps running around, and of course I'd get them out and look at them. So I had a map I used, and he and I actually worked out a route before I left. Preliminary. I didn't stick to it all the way, but pretty much.
Except for the hog.
Yeah, where the hogs were at. Yeah, that's right. I deviated from the plan on that day. Some guy goes, "Hey, I tell you a better way," and I said, "Okay." And I'm glad he told me, because had I gone the other way, I'd never experienced that.
That's awesome. Too bad you didn't have a camera, like you said. But
I can't believe I didn't take some sort of camera with me, because I could have taken just hundreds of pictures of stuff.
And the people along the way that you met.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. So
there's another story. Is it a Boy's Life or Highlight Magazine where you and your brothers were gonna get these bikes? I'm like, oh.
Well, yeah, that wasn't part of the trip, but I threw it in there because it was like the beginning of the seventh day. The day before my sixth day, most of the day I'd been rained on all day long, and it was one of those days. Tomorrow I'm gonna get I stayed in a hotel 2 different nights because of the rain. Otherwise, I either camped out or stayed in jail or something. I decided that evening, that when I got to this little town called Prattville, I found a little motel. And back then you get a motel for $4.50. It's hard to believe now. And of course they weren't big fancy places, but So I pulled in there and I said, you know, heck, I went to the little store across the street and I got bags of popcorn and Cokes and candy bars. And I sat up till the, you know, back then TV went off at 12 o'clock at night. It was, you know, you didn't see
I'm
nothing.
old enough to remember that stuff.
So I was just going to eat, be a pig and just sleep in tomorrow. And then I was going to go find me an 18-wheeler heading that way and throw my bike in the back of it. I got it the next morning. When I woke up, I'm laying there looking at that bicycle, and I thought, you know, these bicycles, it cost me a lot of pain in my life, and so I relate to a story in my book about I was a Boy Scout, and we used to have this magazine called Boy's Life, and they had somewhere in the magazine they had this 2-page ad, and what it was, it had little picture, whether it was a drawing of a baseball glove and a baseball bat and a football, and you know, back then boys had holstered little cap guns and all this assorted toys, and it had a 10-speed bicycle on it. It was the big, and what it was is you could order. They wanted you to sell Christmas cards, birthday cards, get well cards. And you would go, okay, hey, I want that thing is going to, so each box counted as so many points. So if you saw something you liked and it was 50 points, you'd order enough boxes of these cards to get this toy. Well, my brothers and I, we all decided, let's each of us get enough boxes of cards to get each of us a 10-speed bicycle, which was, you know, some ungodly number of cards. So we sent that off. And one day that we're at my dad's, somebody knocks on our front door on a Saturday morning, and we're in the house, and my dad hollers, "Boys, get in here, get over here right now." We come out there, and there's this guy, kind of like a UPS truck in those days, and he says, "This man says that he's got some boxes that you guys ordered. What'd y'all order?" We almost forgot about it by then. It had been about a month. So my dad's, well, let's go see. The guy rolls up the back door, and this truck has got boxes that are like 12 inches by 12 inches by 10 inches high, just stacked to the ceiling. And my dad, and you know, the truck was 15, you know, the box of the truck was like 15 feet long. My dad said, well, how many of them are there? And the guy says, all of them. My dad just started cussing. Get in the house. And so we go in the house, and my brother's not thinking he's going to tell this guy to leave, but nope. They unload every one of them in the garage. My dad comes in, he gets a piece of paper, and he gets a map of Houston. He starts writing, making little districts like, and he gets this. He says, "Okay, boys," he says, "this will teach you a lesson. Each Saturday from now on until all those are sold, I'm going to drop you guys." And he had, you know, where these different sectors would intersect. He said, "I'm going to drop you guys off right here at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and I'm going to pick you up right over here at 3 o'clock, and you boys just sell them cards. You're not getting any Saturdays off till they're all gone." Man, I'll tell you what, we were dummies, you know. We go to the door, go knock on the door, go, "You don't want to buy any cards, do you?" "No, we don't want to buy any cards." We go, "Okay." You know, just, you know, I was like, I don't know, 10 years old. My brother Larry was a year younger. He was 9, and Henry was 8. We were all 1 year apart, and it took us forever and ever to sell those things. And I remember I was down to like 2-3 boxes, and they were assortment of cards. You know, you get so many Christmas cards, so many birthday cards, so many get well cards, that kind of stuff. And I didn't think I was ever going to sell them. Finally, I knocked on the door, and one of the only teachers I ever had in my fourth grade teacher answered the door, Miss Flowers. And right away I went, oh my gosh, I thought I'll never say. And she felt pity for me, and she bought my last 3 boxes. And but yeah, that was let me tell you, that was torture for kids.
That was a lesson to be learned.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, a lesson to be learned. I can't believe that Boy Scouts had, well, nowadays, and I guess same way, I know in my office, well, I'm retired now, but there's always somebody bringing a box of candy in there or candies and selling it for their kids. And I guess they did the same thing back in those days. My dad had no part of it. You got into this, you get out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
You guys ended up getting some bikes, though.
No. Oh, yeah. When we finished, he sat down and got a piece of paper out, and he wrote down how many miles he had driven to take us to all these points, how much of his insurance bill, car insurance included, how much gas. He had it all figured out. Well, we didn't. He says, that my cut. Because you could either get cash or you could get the bike.
Mm.
So he said, you're going to get cash, and so we didn't get a dime. We didn't get the bikes or anything. He collected all of it.
But at some point, all 3 of you got bikes, and the
oh, that was yeah, that was later. We oh, that's a different story. That's
a different story.
Yeah, because everywhere I went, people would say, how many flats have you had? How many flats have you had? See, my brothers and I, we all had paper routes when we were in junior high, and we rode thousands of miles and never got flats. And really, I added this story because one guy said, well, what if you do have a flat? And I said, well, I got a tire patch kit. He goes, so he was like, you smart aleck kid, you knew you were going to get a flat. But I had my dad to thank because one year we went to my dad. It was about the same time frame. We were even younger. And we went to him as all 3 of us. He was sitting he read books. He was on the sofa reading a book. And we went, Dad, can we have bicycles for Christmas? He goes, well, sure. We're like, really? And he goes, yeah. He says, you just got to come up with 50% of the cost of it. Well, why? Why we got to do that, Dad? He goes, well, if you pay for half of it, you're not going to tear it up. Well, David over here, he did his. I'm not David's dad. I'm your dad. And that's the way it works. Well, how are we going to make money? We're just little kids. And they were building an Interstate 10 not too far from our house, and it was all kinds of construction. And back then, you could get a Coke bottle, any Coke, soda pop bottle, and take it, an empty one, and take it to any convenience store, and they give you 2 cents for it. And we used to collect them and buy Cokes, because you get a Coke for 6 cents back. So you could pick up 3 Coke bottles and get a Coca-Cola, and you could also get, we had BB guns. We'd get BBs that way. We'd pick up Coke bottles and you get a little pack of BBs for, I think, 25 cents or something like that. So he goes, well, you guys make money picking up Coke bottles. He just go down along I-10 and pick up Coke bottles. So we did for like 6 months. Now, I'll be honest with you. He never really told us the price of the bikes. I doubt that we actually got the full 50%, but it was enough to satisfy him. And he bought us all 3 bicycles for Christmas. So on Christmas Day, of course, we rode those bicycles all we left. As soon as we got them, we left, and we didn't come back. It was dark. And the next morning, just as the sun came up, he came in. My dad was an interesting guy. He was a sergeant major in the Army during the Second World War. And my brothers and I, actually 4 of us, we all lived in one room and set up like a barracks. We all laughed when we were in the military. We've been in the military all our lives and didn't know it. So he came and got us up, and he said, okay, least the three of us, my youngest brother was adopted, and he's 8 years younger than me. He was excluded. He didn't have a bike. And my dad said, well, yesterday you got your bikes. Y'all had fun. He goes, but today he took us out in the garage, and he pulled out, he had this toolbox or tool thing he had on the wall, sliding doors, and you'd slide and have all these tools, and there'd be an outline of a hammer, there'd be a hammer, a saw, and an axe, and all this stuff. And he'd section one part off and all these tools, and he says, these tools on this side are mine. He says, these tools over here are now yours. He says, I didn't give them to you yesterday because they're not a gift, they're tools. He says, you wanted the bicycles, you got them, but you're going to learn how to fix them. I'm not. So that whole day, he made us he showed us, we tore those bicycles as far down as you could with just, hand tools, and made us put them back together. And he even went so far as pumping the tire up and sticking an ice pick in it. So, okay, now you're going to learn how to fix it flat. He did. And when he was all done, he said, well, you know how to fix them. Don't ever ask me. We didn't. We wouldn't dare.
Right after that day.
Yeah. Yeah. But my brother, well, we would call him Henry now, but back then we called him Eddie. And he was the youngest. And it seemed like every time my dad wanted to teach me something, I guess he just figured, well, I'll get all three of them at one time. I'm not going to do this 3 separate times. So my youngest brother, being 2 years younger, he always had the hardest time, and he'd always be the last one to catch on. And I always felt sorry for him because he'd be out there crying. My brother Larry and I, we'd be laughing at him. He's sitting there crying.
Oh.
But yeah, he taught us how to fix those bicycles.
I thought it was very endearing to bring in, mentioning your family through your adventure there. I mean, they were part of it.
They were very unique parents. Yeah, it's kind of weird because they were disciplinarians, but they were very fair. They never disciplined you because they were angry. They always disciplined you when you did something they already told you.
Right.
The time you get away with, next time you're gonna pay for it. And like I say in the book, almost all my friends were always amazed, I'd say, that they'd let me do this and do that. And I always just say, you guys just don't understand. They give us our parameters. We know that if we exceed those, we're in deep trouble.
Right.
You say a line in the sand, and we jumped over that line many times, but we got back across real quick.
Do you have a quick story to share that you probably prepared for tonight and you didn't get to tell yet?
Well, I had my daughter over here tonight, and I told her, I said, yeah, they said maybe I can tell some stories. You got any ideas? And she says, well, you got all kinds of little short stories. When we talk about writing, I've had so many people say, oh, you should write more. And I get fired up, and I've actually got like four books started. And,
right.
And one of them was about just a day that was my best friend and I. My parents let us, when we were in 6th grade, whatever, you were 10 or 11 years old, catch the bus to downtown Houston all day long by ourselves. You never hear that today. People go, I got one started about that. And then I was a Vietnam veteran. I've always had people say, oh, you got to write a book about Vietnam. I go, no, I don't want to write a book. I was in the 75th Infantry Airborne Rangers. Said, I don't want to write a book about Vietnam. Well, you've told us a lot of stories that are non-combat related and really good. So I decided to write some shorts, maybe make a book of short stories that people would, because people ask me, oh, wasn't it terrible in Vietnam? And I said, yeah, I had some of the worst times of my life, but I also had some of the best times of my life. Because you're young kids, you're not kids anymore, but you're 18, 19, 20 years old. And trust me, when you have spare time, you find plenty of stuff to entertain yourself with.
Right.
Written a couple of stories about that. And then I have another story I started where when I was in high school, my brother and three of us decided we were going to build a raft and float down the Colorado River on it.
Oh no. I want to pre-order that.
Which one do you want? Which story do you want to hear? Those are, I'll tell you one of my Vietnam stories. It's a non-combat story.
Right.
When I first got there, I had gone to a year of training in the States, and when I shipped over, I actually shipped over with 6 other guys that I knew at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and we were all sent to the 173rd Airborne Brigade. And the first day, even though I could go on and on and on here, but when we got there, anytime you move from one unit to another in the military, there's like 2 or 3 days of what they call processing, where you get equipment issued to you and you do this and you do that, and you get shots, all that kind of stuff. So the first day, up in this mountain range, this base up in the mountains, they said, okay, you guys, it's late in the evening, just go to the chai hall, get something to eat, go back to the little like barracks. And for any of y'all interested, we got some guys here from the 75th Rangers. They're going to be looking for volunteers. Well, me and these friends of mine, we all said, hey, let's hang around for that. So we volunteered for this 75th Ranger thing. Well, they had a condensed Ranger school in Vietnam in lieu of sending us back to the States and going through the school here. But the 173rd Airborne Brigade had a 1 week acclimation type training that everybody, no matter what your job was, whether you were a clerk or truck driver or infantryman, you went to it to kind of acclimate to the weather and so forth before they actually shipped you to your units. So we were supposed to go there and then go to this Ranger school thing. Well, we went there and did what all the little training stuff. And the last day we were there, we're standing in this formation of the night, and they're going to release us. And the first sergeant gets out there and he says, "Okay, everybody, tomorrow morning you're going to go to your different designated units." And he says, "But if you don't have a haircut as short as mine, you're not going to go." And he's almost bald headed, and we're all going, "Well, where are we going to get a haircut?" There's like 200 of us, and he says, "Well, there's a barber shop. There's some Vietnamese guys there. They have a barber shop in there. They'll give you." So we headed across the street, and there was everybody else did too. So me and these other guys that I was with, there was like a little bar, if you will. This is on the base right there selling beer, and we said, "Well, let's go get some beer." And we're sitting in there, and somebody says, "Hey, you know what we really need? We ought to get mohawk haircuts." We'll show up the 75th Rangers with mohawk haircuts. They'll like that. They'll like us for it. So we got back in line, and of course we were last in line. And we finally got in there, and a guy named Bolton, he gets in the barber seat, and he's trying to explain to these Vietnamese what a mohawk haircut is, and they don't have a clue. So somebody says, so I get up and I sit in the chair next to him, and we explain. So they give us mohawk haircuts. And then, so we get out of the chair and we say, "Okay, you guys, it's your turns." And they started laughing at us. And one of my friends named Bruce Sellers, we're still friends to this day. I'm friends with all those guys still today. They go, "We're not getting no damn mohawk haircut, you idiots," And so we're going, "You sorry dog." So we go back, and they have a final formation before they tell everybody to go to bed, do a head count. We're standing there, and the first sergeant, he gives us all this, "Well, tomorrow you do this, you do that, do this." And he said, "Okay, before I release you," he goes, "I've got word that there's a couple of idiots in this group that have got some funny haircuts." Of course, I'm going, "Oh my gosh." And he says, "You better not let me catch you, because you'll be dead meat. And so, okay, everybody released. And so my friend Bolton, the other guy that got a haircut, he goes right up to me and says, Steve, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I said, it's going to be dark in 30 minutes. Just put our hats on. Don't take them off until we're out of here. We'll get back to the back of the formation tomorrow. Well, he said, okay. So I was in this, they had us in tents, sleeping in cots in these tents. And I'm just getting ready to go to sleep and lay down my cot, and he comes running, my friend Bolton comes running into the tent. Steve, first sergeant wants to see us. Oh my gosh. So we go down there and I have a little orderly room, which is an office, and it's set up in a tent with wood floors. And we push open the flaps and we go in there, and there's there's the first sergeant, and there's another sergeant sitting next to him. And as I walked in, we were getting ready to go, I said, keep your hat on. So we walk in here and we, come in and we, Specialist Probst and Bolton reporting his orders, first sergeant. And he just sits there and looks at it and he says, take those damn hats off. What do you think this is? A circus? This is the United States. Blah, blah, blah. You can imagine all the curse words. Army, not a circus. And so we whipped our hats and we just got these mohawks. And he just looks at this other sergeant, the sergeant first class. I don't know if you're not in the military, those don't mean anything to you, but he looks at this guy and right away we recognized him. He was the guy that recruited us to be in the Rangers. The first sergeant says, Sergeant. Oh, yeah, he looks at us. He goes, you know who this is next to me? And we just go like, no. And then he looks at that other sergeant. He says, and he looks at me. He says, well, this is the Sergeant Tectral. He's in charge of Ranger School. And he looks at Sergeant Tectral and says, you want these clowns in your unit? And this guy didn't have any expression on his face at all. He was hardcore, looking like he'd been in 10 wars, And he just looked at us. And so the first sergeant, he starts calling us all kinds of names and idiots and everything. And he says, okay. He says, Sergeant here's to pick y'all up in the morning. He says, I have something for you to do first. So he says, follow me. We go out, and it's dark by then, and we go to this giant pile of dirt. And in Vietnam, and just like in Kuwait and all these places, now you see all these places where they got sandbag walls and all this. They had these bags everywhere. Had people built walls out of sandbags. He says, and he had a pallet of these sandbags, just all bundled up. And he goes, for every minute it takes you guys to get that off the top of your heads, you're going to fill 10 sandbags each before you can go tomorrow. Get out of my face. Get back here as soon as you can. So we run down and we get the shaving cream put on our head and we shave ourselves in the middle of the night. At the top, just got a strip of hair on our. And we run back, and he says, it's been 37 minutes.
Holy moly.
370 sandbags each. So, I don't know. I've worked with my dad when I was a kid, and I've shoveled a lot of sand. We can do this. And so we decided, okay, I'll hold the bag open. You fill, I'll hold 10 open. You fill them, then we'll change places. So we're just filling sandbags like crazy. And for a couple hours, we didn't talk. We're just like machines, and we're making a nice, neat little wall out of them where you can count them. And Bolton says, we ought to be just about done. There's a thing. I said, heck, let's count them. So we started counting, and gosh, we didn't have but like 110 of them filled. And by now it's already 1 o'clock in the morning, So we're going, oh my gosh, and then you get tired, and after a while, it's like, I'll fill one, you fill one, I fill one, and we talk, like you do. First, you talk about it. You talk about, football back home and your girlfriends and all that crazy stuff, and all just like how you solve the problems of the world. Then after that, it was no talking. We were just like dead tired. And we said, let's count them again. And once again, we knew it was only like 3 hours for it to be daylight. We didn't have half of them done. So we got this bright idea. Let's just pile them up in a big pile where they can't really count them. We'll just tell them we got 750 or 700 of them done. So we just started slinging sandbags and sandbags. We got this big old pile of sand. And then the sun started coming up and the camp started coming alive. And you could the bacon from the mess hall. And then this truck pulls up and all these guys that we were going to go to ranger school, they're getting in this truck. We're going, man. And they start hollering at us, like, hey, it's been nice knowing you guys, and we're going, oh my gosh. Here comes, and we're hollering obscenities back to them, it's all in fun, but and all of a sudden behind us we hear this voice, that look like you're filling sandbags to me. And we turn out it's the first sergeant instead of sergeant. And he says, how many sandbags you got? And this buddy of mine, he goes, 700. And I thought, oh my God. And this guy goes, I've been in the Army for 30 years. I know 700 sandbags when I see them, and that ain't no 700 sandbags. And I'm going, oh my gosh, we're not going to get to go. So, but he looks at the other sergeant. He goes, well, I don't want these clowns in my unit, but if you want them, you can have them. And this guy still hasn't said a word. He hasn't smiled. He's just looking at us like, I'm thinking this guy will kill us if we go with him. And so he says, I'll take it. He says, get your stuff and get on that truck. So we got ready to climb on the truck. He just looked up at everybody on the back of the truck and says, help these two last to the Mohawks on board. He started laughing, And of course, we knew we were good then, but man, that was a long, I don't know, maybe might have been a good story, but that was one long, 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 long night. I'll never forget it. So,
Steve, we've gone over time. I want to thank you for your service to our country and protecting our.
Well, that was a fast hour. I was worried I wouldn't have enough to talk about, but
we did just fine. I really appreciate you coming on tonight, and I want to tell my audience, if you're watching this, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And to y'all, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it.